Welcome, everybody. My name is Jacob Barbard, and this is the Anti-Recidivism Coalition's Criminals and Gang Members Anonymous. Of course, me and my boy Caesar's here to move on to the next step, which is Step 8. We've been having a real good time bringing y'all these steps and working through them with you. So we start every meeting the same, and that's with check-ins. So what's up, Caesar? How you doing, man? I see you still quarantined.
Absolutely, man. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, Jacob. Like I said, bro, we're still on modified program. But as for myself, how I'm doing today, I'm an 8. As the viewers know, I'm always an 8 no matter what. I had a 3-day weekend. I took Friday off, a vacation day. One of the things that I'm able to do, even though we're a modified program out here also, is after work I get to jump on my bike and I ride around the city, right? And it's I'm fully covered. I have my face mask on like you're supposed to, and I carry my hand sanitizer with me. But it's a good way to at least exercise the legs and the body, and you're out there. It's a great way. Also, I want to send a shout out to the people that have reached out to me via mail through ARC that has been watching these videos. I'm glad that they enjoyed them, that they got a lot from them. One of my really good friends from childhood that I had really lost contact with came home about a week ago, and he shared with me the other day that he's seen 2 of them, and he was very inspired to see me. In the beginning, my name sounded familiar to him, but it wasn't until he seen the video that he put 2 and 2 together. And this is one of my LWAP partners that I knew from back in the day. So now he's home, man, and he's blessed, and we're getting ready to sign him up in ARC and get him through the program, right? But other than that, Jacob, I'm doing great, man. I'm looking forward to Step 8. This is a huge step in everyone's recovery. So I'm hoping that we can help you guys out and connect the dots in your life.
All right, thanks, C's. I'm gonna check in as a 10. I'm a true 10. I choose to be a 10, and I'm a true 10. Things are really looking good right now. Things feel good for me right now. My family's okay. I'm okay, and life is really good. I'm enjoying my life. This weekend, there wasn't much to do, but I helped a friend move. I'm helped her move from one spot to another, and man, I ain't know I was that much out of shape, man. I started picking up stuff. I was like, man, this is heavy. But of course, she was a pretty girl, so I had to play it off like, oh yeah, I got it. But overall, life is really good, and I'm looking forward to getting into Step 8. So let's start it off by talking. Let's do the little pre-stuff we usually do, and I want to read the paragraph, and then I'll throw it to C's, and we'll figure out where to go from next. So, identifying and repairing the damage we have caused. The first 7 steps of recovery are all about you. They are all about getting right with yourself and understanding the reality of your negative behaviors. Step 8 is all about looking back to determine where you were at fault and about getting right with others. Here's where it stops being about you and puts you in touch with your own humanity again. In this step, we take accountability for our wrongdoings and destructive lifestyles, and through our sincere efforts to understand how we negatively impacted others, we begin to feel empathy and compassion for the people we have hurt as the result of our actions, behaviors, and addictions. I read that a little bit off, but I put them all together. So, Step 8 helps you become more mindful of your place in the world and the effects you have on others. You will need to come to the place in your heart where you're not only willing to make amends, but you understand the need to. This process is all about taking action to heal the past with others. You will regain your confidence and be able to look people in the eye again. Additionally, the process of forgiveness and reconciliation enables more release and healing of our own pain, anger, guilt, and resentments. So this is the precursor to Step 8. So, see, kind of walk me into the step if you don't mind. You maybe want to read the step so we'll know what it is and kind of walk us into it.
Sure, sure. So in step 8, it says we made a thorough list of all those we have harmed, realizing how our negative actions impacted their lives, and became willing to make amends to them all. So one thing about this step that we always do is we break it down in 3, right? In 3 sections. And like I said earlier, this is a step where we hold ourselves accountable and take responsibility for our actions. I think some of the stuff that you read on that paper was, where were you at fault? If you were destructive, if you were a gang member, there's no way around it. You lived a life that was very destructive, promoted violence. You hurt a lot of people, hurt a lot of relationships. So half of the work, to be honest with you, Jacob, is probably already done because the list that we're going to use in this step, it says here the thorough list of all those we have harmed, it comes from step 4. We can go all the way back to step 4 and get the list from there. Throughout, like I said, throughout the first 7 steps, you've realized that now maybe because of this work, you've other people have come to mind that you might have hurt and that you want to add to this list, right? So once we become responsible and we gather up this list, then what's the next step for it? What's the next? What do we do? How do we make amends? Because there's different ways of making amends, right? And taking responsibility. I also believe that this step is huge with empathy, right? Because we have sympathy, empathy, and apathy, right? And the 3 are very different. Sympathy is having sympathy for someone. Empathy is putting yourself in someone's shoes that you've hurt. And apathy is when you don't really care about anybody, correct?
That's right.
Correct? So this is a step of empathy. This is a step where you sit there and says, man, how can for some people, I can't even imagine how much pain and suffering that I caused them. Like even if I were to put myself in their shoes, I can't. For some people, they're already familiar with empathy because maybe they've had that happen to them and they see like, oh man, I know exactly what you're going through, right? I know exactly what happened. Like I shared before, Jacob, where when my father passed, right? Now I'm able to say, you know what, I know exactly how you feel. Exactly how, because I felt that way not a few months ago, and it's not a good feeling at all. So for me, like in the beginning of the step, it's about making that list, right? Like I said, the list is already done from step 4, so now we got to put these names down. What's the next step?
So some of the things that this step entails, and I'm gonna throw it on the screen. So willingness to make amends is honestly looking at the loss, damage, and injury we caused. So what does that entail? It entails being honest about the damage that you caused, finding the desire in your heart to repair it, taking full responsibilities for your wrongdoings, and having the courage to follow through with efforts to repair the damage. So everything starts with honesty. When we start talking about these steps, we have to be honest about how events played out in our lives. I know, speaking for myself, a lot of times when I look back at my past, I always see myself as a victim. I look at ways to mitigate my responsibility where I won't be as culpable for some of the decisions that I made. But the truth of the matter is when I'm being honest with myself, I can see my responsibility. In the last video, I believe it was, I was sharing with you guys about an incident that happened when I first got out, and this guy cut me off in LA, and I jumped out the car and we got ready to fight, and I broke it down and walked away. In that instance, it was easy when I first looked back at it to say, oh, this dude cut me off. It was his fault. But when I really take a responsible view, I realized that a lot of that action was caused by me, he cut me off, sure, but I could have kept driving. There was no injury to me. He didn't hit my car. He didn't hurt me in any kind of way. No, but I chose to escalate it by flipping him off and cussing him out. And I have to be honest about that. I have to be honest about my wrongdoings and my part in it. And I have to be willing to repair that damage. My intentions has to be to repair the damage. And this was this step is about. It's really about your intentions. It's not, this step doesn't say that you have to make an amends. Here's a step that for you to look back and examine yourself in an attempt to forgive yourself for some of the wrong doings that you've done, not only to others, but to yourself. And so this is a very powerful step. It's a step that I really enjoy.
Yeah. For me, like we're always talking about the board, right? For a lot of people, especially our viewers that are seeing these videos that we're doing, I want to say maybe 80% of them have to go to a board, whether they're lifers or they're just YOPs, right? Youthful offenders. And this is the step to take responsibility where you show like this is how many people that I've harmed, right? If I'm putting my packet together, this is how many remorse letters that I've written because I did a thorough inventory list, right, of all the people that I've harmed. I did it, and here's all my remorse letters to show for it, right? This is me showing two things that's very crucial on the board: insight, responsibility, and remorse. Out of the three, you're covering two with this single step right here. Not to say that you're not covering it on the last seven, but this is the one where you step up and says, you know what? Because I remember we used to always question, well, how many remorse letters do we write? Like, is there a specific number, right? A lot of people, when I first began this work, used to always just write one remorse letter because they thought, well, I just got to write the victim's family, or I'm writing to the victim that I hurt or killed or whatever, right? But as this self-help therapy began to escalate, we started to see that, you know what, it's not about writing one remorse letter. It's about writing various remorse, because not only did you hurt the family, but what about your family? What about the community? What about, a lot of people have a problem with the police department, man, because of the lifestyle that we live. We literally made their jobs a lot harder, a lot more difficult, and a lot more dangerous, right? Because if I have a gun on me, and because I'm a gang member, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you, oh, for protection. No, I'm a gang member, and if I see one of my rivals, I'm dumping on them because this is why I have my gun. There is no other excuse about me having a gun. Oh, it's for protection. I gotta protect my protect. That's why they have cops, right? And that's how we justify that behavior. But when I had a gun, and if the cops are coming, hey man, I'm liable. I know I am, because I don't want to go to jail, and then I don't care. I'm living an irresponsible life. So you have to write a remorse letter to the police department. They might not answer you back, but at least you made that effort. The intention is there, right? And this is what step A is about. The intention, like, okay, let me see how many people. And like I said, half of the work is already done. If you've done step 4 inventory, you already have that list. Now let's go on to the next phase of it, right? I think the second part of this step is realizing how our negative actions impacted their lives. What I just said right now, right? Us as gang members, how much, how more difficult we made their job. Their job is already dangerous as it is, but now because we're gang members, man, we make it a lot more difficult, right? Our families, because we're gang members, we're bringing that stuff to the house, and now we're putting their lives in danger, right? Our communities, like this is why step 8 is crucial, Jacob, because man, we have to really look at, man, who we were and how much pain and suffering we caused all these people, and it's only right for us to step up to the plate and begin writing these remorse letters.
I'm with you on this. This was a difficult step for me. I remember when I first got to step 8, I was really reluctant to do it because I was worried about the effect it was going to have on me, being an ex-lifer or being a lifer at that time, waiting to go to the board, writing these remorse letters. I thought they was going to pull scabs off of wounds, and victims was going to show up, and everybody was going to want to hate me and hang me and put me through the ringer and all this other stuff. And so here I am, one of my defects of character pops up again, selfishness. I'm worried about me. And so I had to really sit back and think about what is best for me, not just protecting me. And what I realized is that I was carrying around a lot of stuff that I really needed to get rid of to really change, to become the authentic Jacob, I had to get this stuff off and not worry about the effects that it was going to have on me. And so the way that I did that was I started thinking about how angry and upset and how hurt I was when people treated me bad. When I had people that did things to me, I was angry at them. I wanted to get them back, and then I flipped it and said, "Well, man, this is the way that a lot of people are feeling about me. I've hurt them. They're angry. They want to get me back. I understand why they were in the courtroom. Like, man, I hope you never get out of prison. I hope you die in there, because they're hurt. Just like I've been hurt before. This is trauma in my past, and I've caused traumas in others' past. So once I started looking at that and I started equating the two, I start to understand how important this step is, not only for the survivors of crime, but also for me, so I can continue in my path of rehabilitation and become a better person, so I can really, really, really pay restitution in the form of giving back to society. So this is a major step, and like I say, it's difficult because for me, I was always concerned about the repercussions of it, but from personal experience, this step here cleared me of a lot of things that I was carrying along, a lot of baggage, as they call. That I finally got to unload this baggage, and now I feel a lot better about life, and I show up differently.
You know, right now when you mentioned when the writing of these letters, right? I remember when I was in prison, and I had like I said, the names had been changed to protect the guilty, right?
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I remember I had this friend of mine that he kept going to board and he kept getting denied. And this is in the early 2010s, right? 8 or around that time. And when I asked him, I go, well, what is it like? Have you covered all the areas that the board is looking for? And he says, yeah. I go, have you written a remorse letter? And he goes, no. And I was like, what do you mean you haven't written a remorse letter? He's like, no, I never wrote one. And I says, why? I said, well, because I'm afraid that if I write the remorse letter, somehow, some way, it's gonna get back to the family, and then they're gonna come to my hearing, and they're gonna speak bad about me, and then they're gonna let me go. And I'm like, what are you like? It didn't make sense to me, right? What he was talking about. And I says, bro, that's I because you're a good friend of mine, and I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. I go, that's you being very selfish, man. I says, because you can decide that if the family chooses to come to your hearing and whether support you or wants you, to spend the rest of your life in prison, that's you can't take that from them. You can't. I says, and then not to make things better, but 9 times out of 10, these letters are not going to hit the family. They're not going to read them. This is just for the commissioners to see that you're showing remorse. If I'm a commissioner and I see your packet and there's no remorse there, that's telling me you have no remorse. That's telling me that you don't really care about the people that you've hurt.
And you'll do it again.
And then you're going to do it again because you don't even care to say anything about it in the first place. Right? But what I believe, and this is, and the reason I'm saying all this is because there's something about what I read in this step in the CGA book, right? And it says, it is merely suggesting that we act responsibly in taking accountable actions to examine the potential need to forgive ourselves, which means maybe he hadn't forgiven himself yet. Maybe it was too much for him. Maybe when he started writing that remorse letter to the family, it was hurting him. It was bringing too much pain and suffering and too much trauma, because the dude was a juvenile also, a juvenile killing another juvenile, right? So maybe it was just bringing up all these old feelings that he didn't want to feel no more. He done part of the work, right? That you have to do to go to the board, but he hadn't done the crucial part, which is step 8. He hadn't sat down really and put his thoughts together to find a way to apologize. Like, how do you do that, Jacob? Like, how do you apologize to a family, bro, that you took their child or their only son? Or like, how do you do that?
I think that comes down to just being authentic and accepting responsibility for what you've done. So I know when I wrote a remorse letter, my attorney kept telling me, do not ask for forgiveness. Do not ask for forgiveness. Do not ask for forgiveness. And I'm like, so what is the purpose of writing a remorse letter if I'm not asking for forgiveness? And she said, well, here's an opportunity for you to take responsibility for what you've done, be honest, open and honest, and give the family a chance to heal and to have closure. And I'm like, well, how are they going to do that without without asking for forgiveness? She said, no, you apologize. You give them that, but it's up to them to take it. All you can do is offer it, and you can't. You'll be selfish. It'll be your selfishness to show up by requesting that they give it to you. So I think when you're writing this letter, the emphasis is just on being responsible, taking accountability for the choices you made and the things that you've done, and authentically acknowledging the pain and the suffering that you caused the family, and in return, letting them know how much that you regretted the decision you made, and how much it the effect that it had on you, also the negative effect that it had on you. I think all of that is part of the makeup of a remorse letter. Of course, there's no defined way to write the remorse letter. There's all different avenues to writing it, but you want to be authentic and you want to be honest with yourself when you write these letters. This step, it's about willingness. It's about willingness to be open and honest and take responsibility. So that's what you have to do when you write these letters, man. You have to be willing to suffer for what is right, and what is right is the relieving of the pain and the suffering that you caused the other family, and so you can also heal yourself and continue to move on.
And one important aspect of writing a remorse letter, it's the fact that if you never experienced it, like some people have, like I said earlier, some people may have lost a loved one through gang violence, right? So they know exactly how that feels. So they could show empathy. But if you're one of those people that has never had lost someone through gang violence, but sit there and say on a letter, well, I know exactly how you're feeling, that's not true. That's not true, right? That's first thing. Second of all, there is no right or wrong way to write a remorse letter. Like you said earlier, don't ask for forgiveness. Why not? Because we're not in a position to ask for anything.
That's right.
I know it sounds messed up and everything, but we're not in a position to ask for any kind of forgiveness. Like I tell my guys all the time, that word, I'm sorry, is really small, but it carries a ton of weight, because the only job for you to do is to put the ball on their court, right? If they choose to pick up that ball and run with it, man, that's beautiful. But if they don't, Jacob, it's okay. You tried, right? It's really out of your hands. It's really out of your hands, because the families might not be forgiving. They might not want to hear from you. They might not even care about you. They don't. You really hurt them. Like, you really put them through hell. I said, so, your job is to just really put that letter together. Don't ask for forgiveness. And believe me when I tell you, we've done this remorse letter writing through the work that we do with ARC and the prisons and the participants that we have. And I've come across, I've read numerous amounts of remorse letters, Jacob, that are beautiful, man, well spoken. And then I've read some that were very, very, very plain, but you could tell that they were heartfelt. You don't have to use those $10 words, right? $2 words are fine. Really saying, like, really expressing your feelings about how much pain and suffering you cause someone. You don't need those $10. You don't need to go use those college words, right? But I've also seen people that are just faking it, right? Because I could honestly tell you, if you're still involved, if you still believe in the gang lifestyle, then you're not going to have any remorse. you're not going to be able to put any thoughts together, and you probably now won't even want to take the time to even do this kind of work, right? Because you're going to be so caught up on whatever else you're caught up on that this is not going to be an option for you. So you have to really, really have a true transformation, or begin, or on that phase of transformation, for you to have a, and like I said, as time goes by and as you start growing and maturing a lot more, maybe your words are going to change and you're going to want to write a different letter, a more heartfelt letter, right? That you want to add stuff to it, because it's not just about writing and just leaving it there until you go to board. You want to update it. You want to add stuff. If you hear something, if you see something, whatever, you want to add to the letter. Always change it. Always keep it like, because the more that you get involved in this work, the more remorse is going to come out, and the more you're going to feel bad. The more you're going to feel bad. Like for me, I wrote remorse letters to the police department. I wrote remorse letters to that parking lot across the street from my house I used to vandalize. I wrote remorse letters to the burger stand that I vandalized, to my community, to my family. I mean, man, because the guilt was just stacking up. Now I'm starting to see, like, now the fog is getting away from my eyes and I can see clear. And I'm like, wow. Like, man, bro, I was horrible. Like, I was horrible. You know what? And I belonged where I belonged, in prison, because my way of thinking was so twisted, man. Twisted, you know? And because of step 8, I was able to take charge of my life and apologize, right, to all the people that I've harmed.
See, I was just sitting here and I was listening to what you were saying, right? And like authenticity, you can say all the right stuff, you can have it sound real good, but you can tell when someone is being authentic. And what I mean by that is it's like having a child, and your child has messed up in school, they come back and you're asking your child what happened. The fact that he's in trouble, or the fact that he did what he did, is one thing, but being honest to you is something different. And most of us would rather for our child to be honest with us and be accountable for what he done or what he did than to lie to us about it. And it's the same thing with these remorse letters. It's a blatant honesty, not done in a way that antagonizes the person, but it's a blatant honesty to let them get a glimpse of who you were at that time and why this happened. And it's just for closure for them, and it's also an opportunity for you to move on. And I was listening to the list that you composed, because I also did that. I wrote letters to the paramedics. I wrote letters to the doctor that pronounced him dead, because he had his hand in this man's chest, and then he died. He had to go out here and tell his family, like, look, your son didn't make it, or and the family was, oh my God, they crying, they're blaming the doctor. You should have did more. And it's not his fault. And he takes that home to his family. So understanding the ripple effect. And I think this is something that's really important that I think we miss when we start talking about the ripple effect and other people that is harmed. I also had to write letters, remorse letters, for people that I've injured in prison. And it was difficult, because at the time when I did that in prison, I felt like it was the right thing to do, or whatever, my thinking was warped or whatever. But I still had to account for that. When I went to the board, and they looked highly upon that, to see that I didn't stop my rehabilitative efforts at the gate. Okay, it's not just what I've done out there in society, it's also what I'm doing in my community now inside this prison, because that's still indicative of who I am. And I'm not that person anymore. And I'm showing you that because I'm being blatant and I'm being honest, and I'm telling you what happened, why I did what I did, and just being accountable for it. So I think that's an important thing that a lot of us shy away from. But if we want to be authentically change people, it's a process that we have to take.
Jacob, when I came home, when I changed my life and I started living the life of service and giving back and helping others, like I told you this before, I always believed, right, that I was, this lifestyle that I was living, you know, this was it. This was my calling. Like this was like, man, this was me, because I wasn't good at sports and I wasn't good at school, but I was good at gangbanging. I loved it. I loved everything about it. Right. So, man, this is what I was born to do. This is what it was for me. And as you can see, I was very, very wrong. Right. Very wrong, because it was just, you know, just cost me so many decades, you know, 2 decades plus in prison, and that's not fine with me, not today, right? So when I changed my life and I went through my transformation and I went back to being me and I found me and I was able to start fixing me and I made it home out here in 2015. Well, since I've been home, I continue living that life. I continue living that life of service, whether, you know, the transitional home that I was part of. I would share my story in CGA about who I was and who I am today. Every time that they asked for volunteers to feed the homeless, I was there. Like, man, sign me up. It's a Sunday. There's football on. There's a baseball. Hey, it didn't matter. This came first. Because if I sit there and say, well, there's a baseball game or then that's me. I'm being selfish again, right? This is an opportunity for me to give back and patch things up and make things right. Well, man, this is where I need to be, because I don't ever want to fall back and be selfish and inconsiderate. And because that's what got me in prison, right? And I lost my family's trust. I lost everybody's trust. I ruined relationships. So today, the man that I am today, um, you know, uh, I'm trustworthy. My family is super proud of what I'm doing, right? And because of who I am today, this is the reason that ARC reached out to me, right? To be part of the Hope and Redemption team, to go back in, because they said, man, this guy, he's been home for 2 years, and everything that I see on social media about him, he's giving back, he's being a service, he's helping others, he's with family, he's just being a good role model out here, right? This is what ARC is looking for. And, you know, to this day, I'm still there, and I'm living a life of service, and I'm helping others, and I do whatever I can to give back. This is a way of me showing remorse. This is a way of me not ever having to write a remorse letter ever again. Why? Because I'm no longer hurting anybody. I'm no longer promoting violence. I'm no longer, you know, putting my family in the back burner and going back to my neighborhood and being over the. No, I'm not doing that. You know? So this step is freaking huge, bro. Huge, because the remorse doesn't stop with these letters. The remorse keeps going. You know, giving back, like I said, being of service, helping others, you know, man, gaining that trust. Because something that I've always shared with the guys in prison was that when you come home, remember one thing: the Jacob when you went to prison, your community says, man, thank God this fool's off the street, right? Thank God he's off the street, man. This menace to society, right? This dude right here was just trouble. And then they see you home and they're like, oh man, here we go again. He's back. Because the community doesn't know what you've been doing. The community doesn't know that you've embraced rehabilitation, that you're no longer who you used to be, that you're back to being. So you can't tell them that. So your actions have to speak louder than words, right? So you start helping out. Like I tell people, man, you can have neighbors with their grass about this big, go over there and cut it for free. Tell them don't worry about it. If you see an old lady, you help her. Like you find ways to gain society's trust.
And those are all ways of making amends. There's different ways of doing it. We want to, and I want to go over the step real quick. So I want to make a quick distinction. It says we made a thorough list of all those we had harmed, and as Caesar had said earlier, we did that in step 4. That list comes from step 4. Then the second part of the step is realizing how our negative actions impacted their lives. So we're talking about, we're made the list. Then we talking about contemplating, like, man, you know what? Man, this is the impact that I had on these people. I had, whoever. This is the impact that I had on my family, on my survivor or my victim's family, and the whole community as a whole. This is the effect that I had on them. And then the last part of it says, and became willing to make amends to them all. So in this step, they're not talking about making a direct amends. They're talking about preparing yourself to be willing to make a direct amends. In other words, we're working on ourselves so we can get to a point where we can be transparent enough to sit in front of someone and give them an authentic amends. So, and that's, it's not easy. Believe me, it's not. It's not easy. So, but this is the work that prepares us for us. This shows us how to take all those walls down so we can be authentic in what we share and how we share it, so other people's lives can be enhanced by it. So, and for me, I like to point that out, because when I got to step 8, I thought, you know what, I gotta make an amends. I gotta make an amends. I gotta make an amends, and that's not what this step is saying. This step is preparing you to make amends. So it's preparing you to write the letter. It's preparing you to start doing community work. And when I say community work, I like to, distinguish between things. Right now, prison is your community, and we get to, while we're in prison, start to be good community members before we get back out to society. We want to show people that, you know what, when you let me out of here, not if, but when you let me out of here, I'm going to be a great community member. So when I'm walking around the yard, am I littering? No, I'm not littering. I know they got yard crew workers that's going to come pick all this stuff up and sweep and all that. That's beside the point. The point is if I'm not going to litter in the community out here, I'm not going to litter in the community in there. So we have to learn that while we're in prison. But step 8 is the opening for that. And I think Caesar did a great job of showing you different ways to make amends in the community that goes along with the letter.
Mm-hmm.
If you choose to write it, and I would encourage you to do so.
Yeah, and it's crazy, because one thing that's very, very important, Jacob, and I want our viewers to clearly understand this. Once you start writing these remorse letters, and you start, like, now you're in a position of responsibility, which means every single action that you take, like, you have, like, there's no more 115, there's no more 128, there's no more 10, there's no more none of that stuff. That stuff has to stop, because there's no one hell that you can sit there and tell me, oh, I've written 10 remorse letters, but you're still getting write-ups, right? You're still getting these dumb write-ups that because what's showing up for, like the reason that they're so big on these write-ups is because that's really you showing you're not being remorseful for you being in prison, right? That's what that means to me. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
and for me, it means that it shows that if you can't follow the laws while you're in a confined, you got the police right there standing 20 feet from you, and you can't follow the law. What makes you think you're going to be able to follow the law when there's not a police within miles of you? So that's kind of what I get from that.
Yeah, and I remember, Jacob, when I began my transformation, and I really wanted to get away from the write-ups, and again, I literally searched my own cell. I searched my own cell. I said, you know what? I'm not going to have any razor blades in here. I'm not going to have any clotheslines in here. I'm not going to have anything that's going to get me a 115 or nothing, because I'm trying to, like, this remorse is real, right? Like, I've really looked at the life that I was living and how much pain and suffering I caused a whole lot of people. I says, and me breaking the rules while I'm still in prison, it's me going against where I'm at right now. It's going against it. I said, so I have to buckle down. I have to be responsible. I have to sacrifice. See, I believe that's the key point, because people don't like to sacrifice, Jacob. Remember they used to tell you, remember back in the day in Soledad, you were able to have 2 pairs of shoes, right? And people don't. Well, I have my yard shoes, and then I have my going to chow shoes, right? And knowing that now you're only allowed one pair, but you have two or three, that's you still what? Being what? Irresponsible,
Yeah, very
right?
irresponsible.
Yeah, because not only are you not supposed to have extra pairs, but you're going against what the staff is telling you, right? I still have a problem with authority, so I can care less what they have to say. I'm gonna have two or three pairs because the homie left and he left me his shoes, and they're just my yard dogs, right? But when they go in there and they take them on a search, then what happens? Then you get mad. Then the resentment starts to build up. Then you start holding stuff against them. Oh, F that cop, man. He wrote me up. He hit my house and he took my extra shoes. Well, you weren't even supposed to have those in the first place, bro. You're supposed to have one pair. And I know it sounds crazy for me to talk about that because that's so petty. But that's the stuff that a lot of people have a problem sacrificing because it starts with the small stuff, right? When you're able to see stuff like, you know what, man, even though these are my yard dogs, they're gonna be my child. I'm only supposed to have one pair, so I'm only gonna go with that, and I'm good with that. You know what? And I'll find a way to make this happen. You know, I don't have to be wearing them in the cell. I could scrub them down after yard or whatever I need to do, and but stop being selfish, right? Stop being selfish. And I use the shoes because that's one thing that a lot of people, and I know when I was there, even though you were only supposed to have one pair, I had about three. You know, I did.
And you know, Caesar, I was just listening to the analogy you gave, and it just struck me as funny because when I was in prison and the police to search my cell and they used to take stuff, uh, I would get mad. I would be infuriated. In fact, I have a shoe program based on that. Officer took a radio of mine, and I ended up in the shoe behind it. Uh, and it's funny. I'm gonna tell you the funny thing about it is that we get so upset when people do wrong to us, but yet we always doing wrong to someone. You know, I could go out on the yard and stab somebody or beat somebody with a lock and a sock, and I feel good about it, but yet I would be extremely upset if this officer came and snatched me out the cell and they start whooping on me.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to point that out because this is what I had to do when I started thinking about my victims and survivors of crime. I got to see how other people's behavior affected me, and then I translated that into how my behavior affected them. And so you think that I'm irate about an officer coming in my cell and taking a radio to the point where I'm willing to be violent with this person, whereas I took someone's life, and I'm expecting that the people that's involved in that person's life to be okay with it. it's like the standard here is like way off. It's way flawed. The thinking is flawed, and here's an opportunity in this step to see how our thinking is off, is flawed, and to understand that just like when people do things to us, it has an effect in our lives. We do things to other people, it has effect in their lives. And I'm talking long-term effects, like uh, that incident, the radio, the decision I made. I spent a couple of years in the shoe, lost all my stuff, came back on A2B. It took me a couple of more years to get a job. You know, there was consequences that followed me for years behind that incident. And the family, 20, 25 years have went by in a lot of people's cases, and yet the family is still going through this traumatic experience, and we have not given them the opportunity to close and to move on because we haven't presented them uh, with remorse. So uh, this is real important stuff. This is where the work is at, and without being remorseful, without finding a way to get the remorse up, because I understand, I really do. I was a gang member, and I have a gang-related murder, and for years I always felt like, hey, we were in this. We both knew what we signed up for. It was either him or me. he came out on the short stick, to short end of the stick, so to speak. And I don't feel bad about it because this is what we signed up for. And never putting any value on the human life. And so this step here helped me find the value in human life and start to realize that we didn't sign up to be killed. We signed up to be gang members, true enough. We signed up for criminal activity, true enough. But when I signed up to be a gang member, I didn't sign up saying, you know what, when I turn 21, I'm signing up so somebody can gun me down for the hood. I didn't sign up for that. So just being honest with myself about what's going on in my situation helped me move forward and processing and getting this remorse letter out.
Earlier when I mentioned too, like, man, you got to get away from 115s, you got to get away from 128s, you got to get away from all that stuff. But if you are one of those people that has written remorse letters, that is in that stage of transformation and change, and you just happen to get a 115, right? For whatever reason, for whatever it's from, take responsibility for it. Maybe whatever that 115 is for, that's something that is going to show you that you still need to work on, right? It's not the end of the world. Don't throw in the towel. Don't say, oh man, I've tried change and I just keep getting write-ups. I don't know what's wrong with me. Okay, well, what is it? What's the write-up for? What are you having? What's showing up for you in this write-up? And are you willing to take responsibility? You know what? I know that I shouldn't have had what I had, especially when it comes to these gadgets, right? These cell phones. A lot of people, they already gotten away from the gang lifestyle, but the criminal mentality is still there. And they will justify a behavior by saying, well, if I have this phone, man, I could, especially right now with this COVID-19, I could talk to my family and make sure they're okay. And I justify me breaking the rules in the prison, right? Are you still there?
Yeah, I mean, we're here. We're listening.
Okay. So even when it comes to that write-up, there's a way for you to say, okay, what's showing up for you? I'm being impatient, right? I'm feeling entitled. I'm feeling like all this stuff that maybe that's what I need to work on. Like, I remember going to the board and I was extremely upset at the commissioners when I got denied. But they helped me. They did. They pointed the areas out that I needed to work on. And that's exactly what I did. Because when I finally started internalizing the work, internalizing CGA into my life and living it, I understood exactly what they were saying. And I told them that before I started my hearing. The second time around, I said, I'm very thankful for Commissioner Ferguson. I had Ferguson, Commissioner Ferguson.
He gave me a date, big bro.
Yeah. So, well, he gave me 5 years. But I was able to express the gratitude of him being my commissioner because he was able to point stuff out about me that I needed to work on. And that's exactly what I did. And because I did that work, I'm free. I'm home. I'm out here, right? If I would have had a commissioner that was probably a little bit lenient with me and would have bypassed, whatever he saw in me and said, he'll be okay with that. He's good. I'll probably be back in prison right now because I never got an opportunity to work on it. And that's why it's important. It's important that whenever we get caught up in some kind of 115, what showed up for us? That's one of the questions that I love asking the guys. Like when they talk about the 115, like what showed up for you? Man, I was selfish. I was irresponsible. So maybe that's what I need to continue work on. I gotta continue working on being how can I become selfless? Well, instead of you asking your family all the time for a package, how about you telling them, hey, how are you guys doing? Are you guys okay? Because look, I'm in prison, but I get 3 hot meals a day, and it might not be the best food in the world, but at least I'm eating. I have something to eat. Are you eating? Are the bills paid? As my little brothers and sisters eating? Like, is everything okay at home? Like, are you guys still working? Because a lot of people, especially at this time, when you and I know, Jacob, a lot of people are losing their jobs, right? But the people in prison, a lot of them that are still selfish are still, hey man, where's my package? Hey, where's my money? I need some money in here. I ain't got no food. My locker's empty. And then the family don't even know that their moms or dads or wives lost their job. You know what I mean? This is an opportunity for you to be selfless and say, you know what, man, I'm cool. You know what? Maybe I'll pick up drawing. Maybe I'll pick up a little side hustle, a legal side hustle where I can sell some and get some food instead of harping on my family all the time.
And ACs, because before we go into the questions real quick, I just wanted to, it just may be a little bit off base, but I did want to just make a comment about those devices that you were talking about. So I think it's really important for people to understand not to drag your family into your decisions. Be accountable. If you get caught with those devices, don't go into the boardroom for you guys that got lifers and say, "Hey, I got it, so I can talk to my family." Because what that message conveys is that your family is all right with you breaking the law. And so if you get out on the street and you get in a tough situation, they're going to be all right with you going to rob a store. They're going to be all right with you going to sell dope so you can try to get yourself, quote unquote, right. So don't bring your family into that. You're making the decision. You need to be accountable for the decision that you make. And if you want to be accountable to your decisions and get free, having those devices is not the right thing to do. And if you do have one and you get caught with it, don't involve your family, because your family is not okay with you doing something that's going to keep you in prison longer.
True.
So it's just like it's a way, and it may not be a verbal manipulation, but you're still manipulating your family to believe that it's okay for you to have this phone. Because if they knew they knew that it was not okay, I doubt seriously if they would agree with you having it. But I just wanted to make that little caveat. So let's go to the questions real quick. And C's, go ahead and run the list today.
Okay, so it says step 8 questions to answer. Question number 1: do you have resentments that are getting in the way of your willingness to make amends? I'm going to use the before and after, right? Before, I did. Why? Because I was in prison for a crime I didn't commit, right? So the resentment was towards everybody. I see myself in the mirror. I was okay with what I seen. But then during the work, I realized that, you know what? I am the problem. I am the problem. And you know what? I deserve to be where I'm at today because of the person that I was. So I don't hold resentments towards anybody. And I shared this before in groups, Jacob, where I said, if the dude that pointed me out in court were to walk in right now, or if I would give him a hug. I would not hold him because you know what? At that time, he did what he thought was best. Did he make an error? I'm pointing, yes. But I can't hold that against him. I'm in a different place now. And this is where I'm at. And I don't want to go back to being that resentful, angry individual. I don't. You know what? Because that's not going to give me the 25 years back. It's not.
And it's going to take too much energy to do that.
Way too much energy. So, number 2, what are the hesitations you have in working on step 8? This is for you, Jacob.
Okay. Some of the hesitations I had when working in step 8, I think I talked about a little bit. One of them was I was fearful for that I was going to be held accountable for things that I did 20 years ago. I was scared to get in trouble. I was like, you know what? If I bring this up and I tell them this, they might show up at my board hearing and say, we never let this guy out. My hesitation was all about protecting myself from further trouble, so to speak.
So for number 3, why is it valuable for you to figure out the nature of your wrongs? When I believe it's very valuable because you know what those wrongs brought you: pain, suffering, and prison, right? So that's why it's so valuable for us to know. And I don't want to experience any of those anymore. So I have to just keep pushing forward. And that's why it's valuable for us to know that. So number 4, why is it important that you're clear about your responsibility?
Geez, one second. And also one of a reason why it's so valuable to figure out the nature of your wrong, so you understand what character defect is driving.
Yes.
And number 4, right? So you want to reread that?
Yeah. Why is it important that you're clear about your responsibility?
I think for me, and I say this a lot. I probably said this in a couple of videos that we've already produced. For me, the clearness of your responsibility goes to your power. The more clear I am where my responsibility is, it gives me the option to make a different choice, which gives me power to make a change. So that's why it's important to me.
Okay. I said number 5, are there people you feel you owe amends to that are a threat to your well-being or a person of concern in another way? I don't think so. I don't believe so. I'm in a great place today. I'm okay, and I've made amends to the people, and I believe my actions, what I do today for a living, speaks louder than anything that I could ever. So number 6, why is saying you're sorry not enough to repair the damage you've inflicted? Jacob.
Simple. Action speaks louder than words. I can tell you anything, but if my actions are not lined up with what I'm telling you, then I know that it's full of crap. If a person comes and hit me at the top of my head and say he's sorry, and then comes back the next day and hit me at the top of the head and say he's sorry, I know he's not sorry because he continues to do it. So I think it's about your actions speaking for you instead of your words.
So number 7 says, why is changing your behavior not enough to make amends? Well, because again, like what you spoke on, right? Your actions, right? It's not just the behavior, it's everything about you. It's being a whole different person. It's being able to be giving and forgiving and loving and accepting and being of service. That's what it's about. So it's not just the behavior. That's not enough. So number 8, how will you cope with any disappointment or embarrassment you might feel if your amends are not accepted?
Well, for me, this is a process of also me forgiving myself. So whether or not the victim or the survivors or the family of the victim, whether or not they accept my amends or not, that's their part of it. My part of it is forgiving myself. So even if they don't accept it, I'm good with that. Because I know I've caused a lot of pain and suffering for them. I'm good with that. But my focus is me becoming the best person that I can be, and because that's what the behavior came from. The behavior came from the type of person that I was. So I want to make sure that behavior never resurfaces. So I'm going to change the type of person that I am, and I do that through this remorse process, whether or not the family or the survivors or the victim forgives me or not. So.
Okay.
I think
Great answer.
I think we ran through this real nice, sweet C's. I was a little worried because I always have problems with this step because, I still get a little nervous in my stomach. I was like, man, here we go with step 8 again. But I think we did a very good job. Thank you for your input. And like always, we want to thank you guys for just tuning in and investing into your rehabilitative or rehabilitation. So we want to thank you guys for that. C's, you got any parting words before we push on out?
Till we see you next time. Step 9.
Peace.
Peace.